Notes to myself for the NIBBI PE24 carb. This is brand new out of the box. It shipped with what looks like a 105 Mainjet, a 40 Pilot jet, and then the optional jet sizes here are a 100 here on the end, in the middle is a 102, and the high size is a 308 with a 105 installed in the carb now. It also includes a 35 Pilot jet or 40. Now I know there is a 38 jet size available as well, but this is what's out of the box. A 40 main and a 40 Pilot jet, and then a 105 main jet. On the Yamaha TTR, that seems to work just fine as is. NIBBI is also one of the one of the more expensive cheap carbs. But I wanted to point out the jets here and the markings. At least these are actually stamped in the brass. Unlike some of the really cheap Amazon carbs I got where it's printed on the jet, and as soon as that's in gas, the printing is gone and you have no way to size what you actually have in the carb after that. So that is one of the advantages here. Some of the cheap jet kits as well, like 20 jets in a box, is great, but they're not stamped, or they're not stamped well. Okay, what I have here for the carb project is a piece of aluminum tubing. I've used this a few times to do this. I put it in a tubing cutter, and I am going to make a sort of sleeve here, and this is about 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm aligning the edge of the tube with the metal edge of the frame here, and then I'm just going to rotate the tube in the cutter and then work my way around until I have my spacer cut off. There's my line. So we just keep doing that over and over. Save time. Here's my final result. It's just an aluminum sleeve. This time I'm taking a different approach with the aluminum sleeve. I cut it out. I'm using different stock, which is thicker. It does not fit over the carb inlet. It's an interference fit, so the JB weld is kind of pointless. So what I'm doing is going around the carb and slowly tapping it into place. So it's going to be an interference fit. I'm literally just going to press it on and see if it will stay attached and be functional. It is less work. That's the advantage. I finished tapping it so it is uniform. The surface is flat, lines up, but again, there is just interference fit. I don't think I could get the sleeve off now if I wanted to. It does not budge. I would probably have to pry it off with a screwdriver. So hopefully it's an airtight seal. Okay, over to the Kayo with the 125 motor. Literally, I am just pressing this into the carb boot here. It seemed to slip in nicely. And then I will hose clamp it in place. I'm replacing the Smartcarb with this one because this one keeps dying of fuel starvation. This one worked great on my TTR, so I'm going to try it again here. Okay, at this point in the carb install, this cable does not work. It goes straight out into the top of the gas tank. I need to do something different with the throttle cable. What I have is an alternative throttle cable that has a bend in it. That will get the cable not going up into the gas tank, but forward. The problem is the cap that's on the end. This is permanently fixed. There's no C-clip or anything else holding it on. But this seems to be a cable that will get the job done. So what I need to do now is cut the cap off so that I can transplant this cable onto the NIBBI PE24 carb that's on the Yamaha motor in the little mini GP bike. Okay, Okay, I went over to the vise and put the cap in. How I'm gonna solve this is with a hacksaw. I am just going to cut into the cap and break it off. All I need is the cable that's underneath it. I'm gonna save you a little bit of the sawing action here, but this is what I'm gonna do to solve the problem. I was not able to finish this in the vise because the vise was pinching the cap shut onto the blade, so I had to freehand this and finish the last few passes to get the skinny end of the cable right here cut through. I'm just holding it by hand and just sawing a few strokes. There's only like a millimeter there on the skinny part of the neck. With this cut, I put a screwdriver in and I'm just gonna hammer that to split it off the cable. Okay, splitting that open with the screwdriver took it off, and now I have my cable that I can use on the bike. Here I have the NIBBI throttle housing off the bike, and I'm screwing in the throttle cable, and then we'll be getting that installed in the carb. Hopefully that'll allow a functional throttle with the swapped out carb. Originally I thought the throttle cable I bought was too small, but putting it on the bike, it routes around the fairing stay back to the carb, and that's where the slide will be. Overall, it looks to be a pretty decent fit. I need to get the cap on and confirm that I can get the cable slack adjusted correctly. On the throttle here, I'm using the first notch on the aluminum throttle for the cable end. I could move it further back if I need to take out more slack, but that does not look excessive. And I also have 0 slack on this adjuster here, so I can make it longer here, which is where you should. But now we need to fit it up and see where we go from there. Nothing is ever as easy as it seems. So putting the cable in the cap here, I have a bit of a problem. It won't go in. So the cable goes in, but the end of the cap, that little notch, won't fit in the end of the carb top. I don't have many options here, so I am going to drill this slightly larger if I have something that's capable. It's very, very close to fitting, but I don't think I can file this down and get it in there, so I'm gonna see if I can find a drill bit that's just slightly larger to ream it open. Okay, this is a little non-standard. This is the drill bit I found that is just slightly bigger than the opening in the carb. This is a 6.5 millimeter drill bit. That's the closest thing I can find. You may not have a metric drill bit. I do. I'm gonna try this. Okay, I got the cable in up here. It's run up to the throttle housing. It is using the first notch on the pulley, and it has just the tiniest bit of play. So there's no adjustment here. There's only a slack adjuster right up here. But with everything put on, it just barely works. Now, I had to drill out the slide to fit the metal tube. Again, that fits all the way to the bottom. There's just the slightest bit of slop there, which is perfectly fine. But the other point was I had to drill it out with a 5/16 drill to get it in there. It was just the only size I had. This could be better. You can see the hole is larger than it needs to be. A 1/4 inch might have worked, but I think when I compared the drill bit, it wasn't. And I didn't have anything between 1/4 inch and 5/16. So it seems to work. It's not gonna come loose or pop out of there. It's literally just in there. The rubber boot fits over it, holds it in place, but so far so good. Next step is put the tank on and try running it. I finished up by putting a couple zip ties on the rubber boot to hold everything together. Up here, I've adjusted the slack out. Throttle's good, tightened everything up. Now, we need to do a test run tomorrow. So I'm gonna put the tank back on and have it ready. Well, I hope this is a good sign. To open the throttle when I turn right. Right turn. Right turn. There may be a little throttle cable stickiness or something. Causes throttle and a left turn causes none. Right turn. Steering induced throttle. That's weird. With the engine off, maybe there's some explanation for that. Right turn. That's not good. Left turn. Right turn. Yeah, that might explain that weirdness. Okay, this is a fit check. I am moving the handlebars lock to lock. And right in there, it gets a tight fit with the cable, but that's acceptable. Here's my problem up at the top. This metal band right here really forces that to get stuck. I think what I need to do is make this move over here around the outside. So this is rerouting attempt B. I'm gonna take it apart again. Again, I've hooked up the throttle there, the cable's in there. It's tough to get it hooked up, but we need to reroute the cable. Okay, this is setup B going outside of the master cylinder reservoir, which gets the cable out of the way here at the front. It's kind of angled up high, but it does clear the fairing, so no issues there. Where I can run the brake line. So the two of them kind of trying to occupy the same space. But I'm gonna try routing C and put it inside the brake line through that little loop there. See if that works better or worse, and then we'll go with the best option. While I was at it, I tried to fix the brake hose routing a little bit by rotating the angle of the hose. And you can see when it comes around, it hits the fairing. So I think what I need to do is trim the fairing off. Whoops. This little piece here, this little hump. So if I make this into a nice smooth arc, I think the brake hose will better fit the bike. Why did I rotate the brake hose? Well, at steering lock here, shoot, really hard to see. It's gonna touch the fairing mount, the center black tube. You'll see the way I have it rotated, it just barely touches it. If I rotate that brake line down here more, it touches that center mount more. So clearing the fairing here will give a little more room to keep this rotation on the banjo. Okay, here it is. Took a hacksaw, cut off part of the fairing. Just tried to make it a smooth arc. This is my final answer before we go and ride. I go and ride. The routing here is in front of the master cylinder. The top of the housing is roughly level with the ground. That's what the cockpit looks like. It is routing the cable between the clutch and the brake, and it cuts inside of the brake cable. Side there. And then back through the frame rail on the right side, back to the carb. No slack. I am concerned the cable doesn't have any slack because I've tried to make the cable as short as possible with this adjuster here. That's as close as it gets. Same thing on the throttle housing. It's as close as it gets. Time to go and ride and see if it has a manageable throttle. I took it back for a test ride and it steers without throttle changes, and it works as close to normal as I could possibly hope for in that regard with that cable routing. Problem now is I have no throttle slack. None whatsoever. I need to get some sort of slack in it because the carb is always partially open and has a high idle, and when it's cold you can't start it without the choke. And the way this bike is set up, you can't get in there to get your fingers on the choke on the other side of the carb. That's a no-go. It did start on the choke and that's how I got it running, but I couldn't turn the choke off, so that sucks. How do I get the slack out? There's nothing on the adjuster here. There's nothing I can do to screw this further into the housing. There's just barely enough threading there to get the nut on to hold the cable from flopping. So I'm gonna take the throttle housing out and take the twist grip off and see if I can modify that to get more slack. Okay, here's with my throttle tube off. You can see where the pin is. It's right there. And if we look where it lines up, it is perpendicular to the cable output right there. I need to move that further back to get slack in the cable, but I don't think this design is amenable to that. My thought is at the front there, that flat side, shave a couple millimeters off that and maybe the throttle can close just a little bit further to get some slack. That is just really, I don't know if it's gonna get what I need, but there's nowhere else I can get slack out of the system. So I'm gonna try that and see what I get. Throttle tube's in a vise. This is very, very loose. I am not gonna try to hacksaw this, but this surface is what I need to cut about 2 millimeters out of to get it a little more, so it'll close a little bit further and hopefully take out the throttle slack. If I take out a large chunk, I would get a lot of range of adjustability, but this is radial. The cable comes in up here, and if I move this down here, the cable would reverse direction. It would not work correctly. So I have to be very careful about how much I take off. I'm gonna use a Dremel for this because hacksaw, there's no way I could do that. Dremel will be my approach. So far the bike is rideable at idle. Throttle seems to be working okay. Throttle response around corners, it's not increasing or decreasing in throttle, so it's